We Get Outdoors Nation, I have the privilege of introducing you today to an old friend, somebody I haven't spoken to. Well, she's not that old, but like old as in we've known each other for a while. We haven't spoken for quite a while. We've both got lots in common and lots in shared passions. In particular, sea paddling and all things outdoors. So, Justine, welcome to the We Get Outdoors podcast.
Thank you very much. It's great to see you again.
Likewise, from the I just realised I'm in South Africa and you're in Canada, so we literally are at about as far apart on planet Earth as you can get.
That's true. I noticed when I had to sign up for times to talk to you that most of them were in the middle of the night for me.
Yeah, sorry.
But luckily, we're able to connect at 7 p.m. my time, and I think the morning for you.
Yeah, 5 a.m. for me.
Oh, wow, that's early.
Yeah, but I have to be honest, I'm normally in bed by 7:30 at night, so my party animal life has left me. So what is it people who haven't heard of you or don't know you should know about you?
Well, you gave me like 30 seconds warning you were going to ask me this. Well, I guess I often say I'm addicted to kayaking, and I'm kind of addicted to kayaking around things. And I'm a sea kayaker mostly. I love the outdoors in general, but what I'm kind of best at, I guess, what I can do all by myself or with friends is sea kayaking trips. And I've kayaked around the South Island of New Zealand, around Tasmania, around Ireland, around Sardinia, around Tierra del Fuego in Patagonia. So you can see it's a bit of an obsession happening there. Although I've also done some linear trips as well. For example, 250 kilometers along the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. And that's kind of what I thrive on. It's my happy place, if you like, being in the wilderness, being having to rely on yourself to get from A to B. Seeing lots of wildlife. I really enjoyed that. I've also made a bunch of sea kayaking films about my adventures and some other people's. And I have an award-winning series of DVDs. So some people might know me for one or the other of those, or may never have heard of me. But I was able to combine my passion of doing all the trips with the filming to make a living out of it for many years. So that was great.
Wow, that's super cool. And your This Is the Sea series has, I guess, the rich and famous of sea kayaking, or maybe just the famous of sea kayaking in a lot of them, as well as your trips as well. We'll come on to that in a minute, though. So we both originally met, and I'm not going to tell everybody how many years ago, but a good number of years ago at Anglesey Sea Symposium. I think Pete Bray had just sunk his first kayak trying to go across the Atlantic and was rebuilding. I know what led me to that symposium, but what led you to taking up paddling and making your way onto Anglesey all those years ago?
Well, I guess I'd always been a sports player at school and university. So I played field hockey for English universities, and sports was my passion. But when I left university, I kind of discovered I went to the canoe club in Jersey in the Channel Islands. And I thought, wow, this is awesome. Like there's no half time, no like 45 minutes each way. You just go out for as long as you want. I saw oyster catchers were the first birds I learned to identify. They're so easy with their bright orange beaks and a loud squeaking noise, but it was cool to me to learn a bird, to go into caves, to see dolphins. I just fell in love with it. And then after 6 months, I went to a symposium in Jersey and started to learn a lot more about it. I got some coaching from different people. And then after that, kayaked to Sark, one of the other Channel Islands. And I just fell in love with the journeying aspect of it. I thought, wow, this is amazing. I want to do this all over the place. And then I was working in Jersey. I got a job in the UK in Southampton. I was a TV journalist. And while I was there, I met Fiona Whitehead, and Fiona used to go up to Anglesey a lot. And so I joined her for one of the symposiums, and I just thought, wow, this is an amazing world. All these tidal races, all these fun people. And eventually I moved up there so I could be closer to the tidal races and all the people that were going out paddling all the time. So that was how I did it. And then from there, I just did more and more sea kayaking and I love the trips, and I also love kind of paddling in the tidal races, the exciting adrenaline, dynamic side of sea kayaking as well.
Park and play sea kayaking.
Exactly. I think I love both of them. It's so versatile.
Yeah.
I remember,
Go on.
I think I met you. I was either doing my 5-star assessment or it was a training, and you were one of my dummy students, I think. Is that right?
I have no idea.
I think so, because I remember you made a comment about my description of how the current hit the skerries and then went either side of it. And you made a comment that you liked that. So I remember that. I don't know why. At least I think it was you.
It may well have been. I have no idea. I came into sea kayaking having already in the British Canoe Union world gone about as high as you could go in canoeing and in whitewater kayaking. And then I met Triss, and who was then Morris, and I can't remember what her surname is now. But we both know. But that's it. My brain went empty, and I twisted Triss's arm into doing a few things, and that she didn't particularly want to do. And her revenge was taking the boy from the short whitewater boat and dumping him in a long boat and saying, "Come to Anglesey for the weekend." And
cool.
Yeah, I spent the whole weekend not knowing anything about sea kayaking, just rescuing Dutch people, putting them back in their kayaks off ferries and whatever else. That was it. That was it. Wow. Hey, and you were paddling like a tiger boat or a boat with black stripes or something like that at that time?
I had a leopard skin Explorer and a tiger striped Romany. Yeah, but I still have the leopard skin Explorer here in Canada.
Really?
I don't paddle it anymore. Yeah, I'm sponsored by Valley now, but it's here in the fleet of my partner who runs a kayaking company here called Skills. Yeah. So it lives on.
Where did the inspiration for those boats come from?
Just something different and kind of fun, really. Just verging on naughty, I suppose, just shake up the rusty old sea kayaking world, I guess.
Rusty old sea kayaking world. Bless their cotton socks.
Sorry. Well, now I'm, however many years later, I'm not a young chicken anymore.
That's it. We're joining the rustiness.
Exactly.
I had hair back then as well. Crikey. So, what was it? When was that first moment that you went and picked up a camera and decided, I'm going to start documenting this stuff that we do?
Well, my first job was a TV journalist. And then when I moved to Southampton, I was a multi-skilled program maker. So I got trained to film and edit and make films. And as I got more into the outdoors, I decided that I didn't want to do that work anymore. I wanted to be outside on trips. Filmed it, then I could make a living at it. And so I bought a camera and I started trying to make a film about a trek that I did in the DAC. And then what happened? I think I was doing some kayaking events and I met Simon Westgarth and a few people like that. And he was making films of whitewater kayaking and he wasn't a filmmaker. And, he did a decent job for a non-filmmaker, but they weren't amazing quality. But they had sort of good content with good paddlers in cool places. And he was selling a couple thousand, or at least someone was. I think maybe I also spoke to the guy that made the Sean Baker films, and maybe he sold a couple thousand. And then I got a deal making a film for BBC Wales about Debs Pinninger and Cheesy Robertson. And I followed them around Europe. And I met some more filmmakers, Corin Addison, can't remember who else. And they were all making films and making money out of it. And I'm like, well, maybe I should do this for sea kayaking because no one's doing it for sea kayaking. I'm actually trained as a storyteller. And, no one else is doing it. So I thought, well, if they can sell 2,000, I could sell 2,000. And I guess that'll be enough to make it worth it and make some money. That was my financial planning. And so I went out and I filmed some of my trips and I filmed some interesting people. I edited it together. I put it out there. I had a crappy website with one page linking to a PayPal buy me site, and it took off. People went mad for it. And that was the first one, and I've since sold over 10,000 of them. So
Wow.
I did okay. and so then I made This Is a C2, 3, 4, and 5. This Is Canoeing, 2 rolling DVDs, and Kayaking the Aleutians, about the Aleutian Island trip. And over time, they don't sell as much. People don't buy things as much. There's more things they have to do with their time. But the downloads still sell, and the DVDs to some extent. Yeah. But yeah, it was, I never intended it to become my career, but I enjoyed it. And when it could pay, I just kept doing it.
It could keep you in expeditions.
Exactly.
So I guess that your life as a filmmaker has got significantly easier over the past, in terms of how you film stuff over the past 20 years or so. Like 20 years ago, we were putting cameras in bloody huge, great waterproof housings and strapping them to things just to go and like get out there and get photos that now a GoPro can do it and you can put it in your pocket.
Exactly. Yeah, it definitely has. But the nice thing was, in a way, is that the camera equipment that I had allowed me to get those shots before most other people could. So it was a real addition to the films, And I had, this crazy setup, this recorder in a Pelly case with wires coming out with a camera on one and a monitor and a microphone and a suction pad pole that I stuck on the kayak with the camera on the top. Yeah, it was expensive and it broke often. Yeah. And it was a pain. And on trips you had to have it in your cockpit with wires everywhere, and you had to try and charge it and they would die. And it was expensive and frustrating. And like you say, now GoPros or similar do the same job.
Yeah, very
a
much.
lot more easily.
Oh, jeepers, yes. And you can take 40 of them with you for the same like volume of stuff that you used to have with you, and GoPro and an iPad, and you're away so quickly to do stuff.
Exactly. Although personally, I think you could benefit from another camera as well as a GoPro, because you can't zoom with a GoPro. The sound's not very good. But a GoPro and one other camera, you can get a great film these days.
It's incredible. It's incredible. But you also took on the brave task, and I don't know whether you realized how brave it was or stupid it was at the time, of trying to coordinate or herd a bunch of sheep, otherwise known as quite high-profile sea kayakers, to go and video them doing stuff. And like, how do you coordinate that lot? I remember watching a whole load of you at the Falls of Laura, I think, with you filming, and there was some of the great and good of paddling there. But I also know how hard those people are to go and get to be obedient when they're not in front of customers. So talk to me about that little journey you had.
Well, I think actually the videos were so popular. A lot of people wanted to be on them because if they work in the industry, it's good for their profile. Most people like to see themselves do cool stuff. And I think the Falls of Laura was just before a kayak symposium on Mull. So most people were coming up anyway. So it was just organized just before. And we went to the Falls of Laura one day and the Grey Dogs one day. And a few people may have come up specially, but most people were there anyway. They just came up early. Yeah. So okay. I tried to take advantage of when there are a lot of good people in the same place. And quite a bit of the filming was done when I was invited to like a kayaking symposium somewhere. And so if I was invited somewhere, I would usually try to go early or stay afterwards and do some cool filming in the area. Either go on a trip or film some people at a fun location. Yeah. So the vast majority of the filming that I did was that. It was piggybacking off being somewhere anyway.
Excellent.
So it worked pretty well. Yeah.
Excellent. I've tried coordinating Nigel Dennis to be in the right time at the right place on many occasions and failed for well over 60% of them, which is why I had to ask.
Well, he was just in it once, and I lived at the same place as him then, so it was quite easy. I just go, right, you ready? Come on, get out here to do an interview. So yeah, if I lived miles away from him, it might be harder.
So what was your first big trip, and how did it come about?
Well, I think probably it was going around Wales with Fiona Whitehead. And we had talked about people paddling around Britain and Scotland, and we both suddenly went, hey, has anyone kayaked around Wales? And Ray Goodwin and some others had canoed around, but we didn't think anyone had kayaked around. So we did that. And that was an awesome trip. And Fiona was much more experienced than me at the time. So I was learning a lot from her. That was really great. And I think it took us 18 days or 21 days or something like that. And we went around the coast and through the canal and river system. And it was great. And we really pushed it. We paddled hard. We paddled long days. And it was quite tough, but rewarding. And then after that, I went to Kamchatka in Russia. And I organized that one with Hadass Feldman. And we kayaked 650 kilometers up the coast there with a local Russian who had never been in a kayak before. So we had to take a Russian with us. That was the rules. So that was a great trip. We had some fun with Alexei taking swims, but it's a beautiful country, amazing way to see it. And that was, we did lots of things wrong. We didn't have enough food. We had way too much fuel. We were lucky with the weather. If we hadn't been so lucky with the weather, we might not have made it in the time we had. Lots of weird things like that. But it was an awesome trip, really cool. And then from there, I think I went to Tasmania with two women, Gemma and Triss. And again, that was cool. And that was just, I wanted to do that. And I told a few friends I wanted to do it. And I was surprised how many said, can I come? So that kind of worked out with those two in the end. And then, from there, just kind of became an addiction. That's when I got hooked.
You got hooked. How do you, on those long trips, it strikes me and I've probably not done as many as you, but there is always a large degree of luck that gets involved in those trips, especially linear trips where you've got a float plane waiting for you at the other end or something like that. There is a very specific time and place. How do you personally go about managing that? Do you push hard and then sit on a beach for 2 days at the end if you're lucky enough to get there early, or do you have a strategy, or do you just cross your fingers and hope for the best?
Well, quite often I try to have a trip where there isn't a fixed end date. It's not always possible though. And I do try to push it at the start to try to make sure that that I'm not going to not make it, kind of thing. And then relax a bit towards the end if you feel like you can afford to. But I also try to have a realistic time plan if possible. And especially as time goes on and I'm less interested in paddling really, really hard every day. So I tend to try to allow more time than I think I might need. And if things are going well and I get to a nice place, then I think, let's have a day off. This is beautiful. It doesn't matter if it's a beautiful day and I should be paddling. I'm going to stay and enjoy this day if I can afford to time wise. Yeah.
And how do you, one of my biggest, I won't say I've got regrets, but I've got a long list of places that I want to go and spend a week in a very small area now. I like each time I've been up the west coast of Scotland, I've paddled past the Summer Isles in about 3 hours. And everybody goes, the Summer Isles. I had a great 2-week trip camping island to island in the Summer Isles. And I was like, I just shot straight past it. And so now I've got this big list now of places that I want to go and explore in more detail. So how do you manage that, seeing everything you want to see and still making progress at the same time?
Well, it's a constant changing process, as I go through different moods in life, as I get older, whatever. What I want changes, I suppose. And earlier on, I had these big ambitions to go around these big islands. And, you've only got the season to do it in. So you only have a limited amount of time, and you're kind of a bit nervous that something's going to happen and shut you out. So I tended to push hard and do big distances. Like when Barry Shaw and I paddled around the South Island of New Zealand, we averaged 51 kilometers a day, and we did it in a ridiculously short space of time. And I think that was just the days we paddled. Maybe that was including the days we didn't paddle. That was probably just the days we paddled. But and bear in mind, we had a few like 5-10 kilometer days as well. So, you know, our biggest day was 92 kilometers, and we were scared of the surf. So often what we would do is we'd wait till the wind was behind us, and we'd put in a really big day, 70, 80, 90 kilometers. And then we'd have a day off when the wind was just light or against us, or, you know, and so we would work really, really hard, surf all day, land at the end of the day, and then have a day off kind of thing. So it was partly we wanted to limit the number of times you had to launch and land in the surf. And that was part of the challenge, and that was part of the fun. You know, the sense of achievement came from pushing yourself day after day. But we went past some beautiful places. And now I want to explore more. So I tend to organize trips where it's a bit less distance per day, and you have time built in for taking time off to enjoy a place. And I also like to do more foraging and fishing. And if you're fishing, it takes a bit of time. You have to find a spot, you have to fish, you have to get the fish, you have to fillet the fish and cook the fish. And, you know, it all adds to your day. And if you're relying on the fish for your food, then sometimes you might take you an hour or more if you find you're in a bad spot for fish, but that's your dinner, so you have to catch it. So if you're relying on fish for your food, which I do more and more these days, you have to assume you're going to paddle a little less every day because you need the time to do it. So it does vary. And then I went around Vancouver Island by myself 5 years ago. And that was an interesting exercise because I was totally by myself. I could do exactly what I wanted. And I found some days I still was in that mindset of making miles. Like the wind was behind me, the current was behind me. I had a target and I was like an athlete. I worked hard and I got as much out of my body as I could. And I put the miles in and I got there and I got a tremendous sense of achievement out of that. And other days I just poofled along by the shore, going in and out of gaps, through rock, and I really, really enjoyed the scenery. And I did what I wanted when I wanted. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And it was a month-long trip. The first 2 weeks, I would have been so disappointed if someone had joined me because I was really needing and enjoying that autonomy. Is that the right word? That like doing what the hell I wanted. Mm. And then towards the end of the trip, I began to think, some company would be nice, some good company. But I do generally prefer company, but it was really good for me to have that time of just doing what I wanted. And, if I landed in a nice place at 2:00 in the afternoon and the conditions were still good, then I might think, stop it. This is beautiful. I'm going to spend the afternoon here, and I would. And other days I'd keep going till 7 at night because whatever I wanted to, or I wanted to get to a certain campsite. So, yeah.
Do you get the
kind of varies.
I don't know this because I've never been as far north as to where you are now. Do you get the very, very, very long days, like almost, sort of 20-hour a day daylight where you are if you're going around the island?
No, we're fairly similar at latitude to the UK. So we get, it's probably light till 9, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night and light at 4 or 5 in the morning. I can't remember exactly, but, it long enough, but not like, it still definitely gets dark. Yeah.
The reason I ask is a few years ago, I was paddling up in northern Norway in the middle of summer. And we had a bucket list of things. We were whitewater kayaking that we wanted to do for the day. And for some reason, none of us stopped and checked the time. And on the last run of the day, the last river of the day, last section was, the paddle feels overly heavy and you're like, why is this such hard work? And I looked, I fished in my PFD pocket and pulled out my watch. And it was like 11:45 at night, and we've been paddling since 9 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, that might have something to do with it. Not enough food, and I don't know how many hours that is on the water, but it's too many.
Yeah, nice thing to look back on. Fun adventures.
That's it. Was it? You must have had something similar when you were up in the Aleutian Isles.
No, again, that's not actually that far north.
Really? My geography is terrible.
Well, I mean, maybe it was a little more than here, but it definitely got dark. Yeah. I don't remember how far north it is, but definitely 50s. God, I haven't embarrassed myself there.
I'll have to go and have a look on a.
I will after.
It's terrible.
Well.
When I get north of Seattle in North America, I get lost very quickly. So the geography goes wonky. Which of your trips would you like to go back and re-experience, or a part of, or all of? Anything?
Probably any of them. Like, I really enjoyed Ireland. I think that was a great trip because it's a nice mix of wilderness and a pub if you want one. So the way that the coast is, a lot of the you can miss the towns if you want because they're in inlets, or you can go into them if you want. So if you want a more wilderness experience, you go headland to headland, off to all the lots of little islands. And if you fancy a pizza and a beer that night, then it's usually not that far away. And the people are super friendly, and it was just very, very beautiful. And I also like big swells and currents, and there's big swells and currents. So I like a bit of challenging water. And I felt we did that a bit quickly in places. So I quite like to go back and experience some of the areas we rushed past. But anyway, like even Vancouver Island, my partner and I are talking about maybe going around that this summer if our trips are cancelled. Because normally we run advanced trips for sea kayakers in areas like the central coast of BC or around Brooks Peninsula on the island. But a lot of them are in First Nations territory, and the First Nations may not want people there again this year. So if that happens, the trips will be cancelled. Plus, if international travel is still not allowed, they may also be cancelled. So we might not have a lot of work again this summer. So if so, we're talking about what trips we can do. And it's limited. We can't even go to Newfoundland at the moment in the same country because they're closed to other provinces. So one idea was to paddle around Newfoundland while we could take that much time off. But if nothing else, we can leave from our front door almost. The beach is like a few hundred yards away. So we could trolley the kayaks down to the beach and leave from home and paddle around the island and come back again. So maybe we'll do that. And again, like, as I said, some of it I took my time on, and other bits I shot past beautiful places I'd like to explore. So it'd be nice to take 6 weeks to 2 months. Or maybe we just do some of the West Coast. Just take the real highlights and take our time. We'll see.
Just go there and
a lot
back.
of unknowns at the moment. Well, maybe, yeah, we could do that. Yeah. Or somehow get a ride or drop a car.
Wow. So how do you, you're talking about the west coast of Ireland, which obviously has got some pretty damn huge surf on it. And the west coast of the island there with the Pacific isn't exactly insignificant when it comes to frigging huge waves. There's lots of paddlers go on trips, and often where they come unstuck is the last hour of the day where they've got to go and take that heavy boat and go and get it onto the beach and, not hurt themselves when they're exhausted. So firstly, like, how do you manage that for yourself? And what advice do you have for other paddlers out there?
I think that for me, I'm very careful to plan good landing spots. So even if I have to paddle further, I will try not to land in the surf. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but often you can plan it to not land in the surf. For example, Tasmania, Haida Gwaii. I didn't do any surf landings in Haida Gwaii, not a single one, despite, paddling the west coast of both of the main islands. But you can find sheltered places to land. So I think it's really important to have good planning and plan a good landing spot. A lot of people, they're like, okay, it's 5 o'clock, it's 4 o'clock, whatever time it is they normally land. Oh, look, there's a beach there. Let's land there. And it's a really bad idea because there's really big surf. And okay, you can probably land one way or another because the waves will push you in. You've also got to launch the next day. So, thinking about that as well. And what's the wind going to be doing the next day? What's the swell going to be doing the next day? Because sometimes you can land on a beach which looks good, but the next day you won't be able to leave. So I think planning ahead is really crucial. And so whenever I leave on a trip for the day, I will look at potential landing spots. And okay, the first one, there might be lots, or the first one might be 20 kilometers away. And then there might not be another one for another 20 kilometers. So if that's the case, you need to keep a really close eye on how fast you're moving, what time it gets dark, what if the conditions are changing, and what time you're going to arrive when you get to the 20 kilometer one. If you carry on, what time you're going to arrive? And is that enough of a contingency? And if you don't get there, do you have any other options? And I think just making sure that you make a sensible choice early enough. And sometimes it means, okay, it's only 2:00. I like to paddle a bit more, but the next place to land is not for 5 more hours and it's dark in 4.
Yeah.
Or it's dark in 6. And if something goes wrong, I don't know, just weighing things up, making a sensible decision early, basically, and not trying to be a hero. I mean, it's fun to surf for fun, but in a fully loaded sea kayak in a remote place where an injury or a damaged boat is very serious, you don't want to mess with that. You just want to find a nice, sheltered, boring place to land and go surfing when you get home.
It's good
my
advice.
policy, anyway.
It's good advice. And I think that sometimes people don't realize just how easily you can go and get remote. I'm thinking about a number of places down the Pacific coast of like Oregon and Washington State that I know very well in North America or in the USA. And you don't have to be that far from a road or that far from from a road, I suppose, before, the only option is paddling out. And if you've punctured your sea kayak, suddenly your world's just gone horribly wrong. And yet the road's only 5 miles away. Remote isn't that remote, really, I don't think.
No, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't have to be. And sometimes even if it's 500 yards away, it's still a bit of a pain to get a sea kayak to the road.
Oh my goodness me. So
up a cliff and across a few fields.
You read I've done that once, and I was just having like post-traumatic stress disorder running through my head of a very heavy kayak with bags going up cliffs and whatever else. Have you had any near misses?
Yeah, and probably no, like really, really serious ones though. And I think the secret is because I try to plan ahead and not do anything too risky. I mean, depends what you mean by risky. I like going out in rough seas, but I'm confident of my ability and my judgment, and I will only go out in conditions where I feel confident of those things. And I think there's a safety net. But to other people, they might think it's risky because they think they wouldn't be comfortable in the same conditions, if you know what I mean. So I'm quite happy to push it big distances if I think I can do it. I guess probably one of the most nervous I was in the Aleutian Islands. And I kayaked along there with my friend Sarah Uten, who was traveling around the world under human power. And basically she was rowing and cycling around the world. But there were a few places where she had to take a kayak. And she asked me to join her because she hadn't done that much kayaking. And we became friends. And so we did the Aleutian Island trip together. And basically we had to do, it was 2,500 kilometers to the nearest road. And across the island chain, we had these big crossings, lots of them of over 20 miles. And one of them was nearly 50 miles. And the 50-mile one ended up being a long day. We landed in the dark, luckily not in the surf. But the most challenging one was probably a 25-ish mile crossing. And the currents in the Aleutian Islands are very strong and they're not well mapped. So you don't really know what's going to happen. You have a very vague idea of roughly what time it changes from flood to ebb. And broadly, it floods north through the islands and ebbs south, but it doesn't always do that. And, you're basically using that as a general guide, but bear in mind the currents can be 12 knots. So, we can paddle at 3. So if you get it wrong, you're going backwards and you don't know what's happening. You have to guess and then react as it's happening. So we're doing this one crossing and it's going well, but then the current turns and basically we're going backwards, but we're trying to get from here to here and we're going back this way. And then an hour later, we're then going this way. We're still going backwards. And we're over halfway. So it's like, what do you do? Do you turn around and try to go back to the other island? Which again, you're not heading directly to, but you're heading more in that direction. Or do you keep going and hope that the current will turn? And that's what we kind of did. And I remembered from my training that, or an experience that sometimes, instead of the current going this way, then this way, it sometimes turns like a clock. Sorry. And so it spins around. And I thought maybe that's what's happening. And I hope that's what's happening. Because if that's what's happening, then it's going to swing in our direction eventually. And that is what happened eventually. But for 2 hours, we were going backwards. We were not going anywhere. We were not able to make progress against the current. So that was pretty scary. And my friend Sarah was exhausted. I was like frustrated that she couldn't paddle faster. She was frustrated because she felt I kept leaving her. And it was just, and I was just like, we have to keep paddling. We have to keep paddling, we have to get there. And eventually the current swung around. We're moving in the right direction, but then we got a 20-knot headwind. And so it was a super long day. And we ended up landing at, I don't know, I think it was 16 hours on the water. And we were very, very, very happy to land. Yeah. So, yeah, unpredictable currents, strong winds. Yeah, that was a challenging day.
It was a bit. How do you on a 2,500 mile trip? How do you go about, or kilometer trip? I can't remember which you said. How do you go about keeping your body together? Because it's a massive strain on your body just to keep getting in a boat every day and paddling, getting in a boat every day and paddling, sleeping on a thermarest. There's not a huge amount of get a massage and recover time.
We did actually have a massage, one in Dutch Harbour. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it was 101 days, but actually we only paddled for 67. And in the Aleutian Islands, it's virtually uninhabited, but there are a few villages along the way. And in the villages, we spent at least 2 days in every one. We spent 5 in one. And so we did have a bit of a chance to recover, eat some proper food, have a shower, relax, rest, rejoin the real world. So that helped a lot, I think. And Sarah struggled. I mean, she was less used to paddling. She was also, after her row, she got pneumonia and she had a skin condition. She was on steroid creams for her skin. And it was, and she hurt her elbow early on. So she was in a bit of pain most of the trip. I wasn't too bad. I'm quite a fast paddler and I'm used to it. So for me, the pace we paddled at was not at my top pace. So for me, I was tired, but I wasn't exhausted. Sarah was paddling flat out of her comfort zone a lot of the time. And so for her, it took more of a physical and mental toll on her. On other trips, I have also suffered a bit. I've had mild tendonitis on a few trips before, which normally goes. And I've had sore shoulders, but I've been quite lucky. Oh, and I had a bladder infection once that I had to get helicoptered out of the South Island of New Zealand because I was in a lot of pain. Yeah, I've been, I suppose, quite lucky with injuries. But I think sometimes you just need to know when to take a rest, like push hard for a while and then have a rest day or a couple of rest days, or And sometimes the weather forces that. And sometimes you just have to go, you know what, I need to rest now. And it does help when you can go into a real bed and have a real shower and someone else cook you meals along the way as well, like we had in the Aleutian Islands every so often.
I remember, you must remember Tim Gunn. Remember Tim?
Yes.
Used to be at the Anglesey Sea Symposium. So Tim lives in the middle of the UK, about 5 miles from where I lived. So I know Tim very well. And he gave me a piece of advice on a trip once, on a long trip. And he said, you'll never be fit enough at the start. So here's his strategy is do paddle 2 days like it was a weekend and then have a quiet day. And then paddle 3 days like it was a long weekend and push hard and then have a quiet day. And like build it up in phases if the weather and tide permits. Because he worked, and you probably remember this, he took a lot of schoolboys sea kayaking to Norway, Lofoten, Svalbard, all over the place. And he was like, the hardest thing whenever he took them somewhere was one of the boys would always injure themselves on the third day or do something stupid on the third day because they only ever got to go paddling for 2 days at a weekend and then it was back to normal life. So he was like, always on day 3, take it easy, do like half the distance you think you're capable of, refresh, and then push again. And I really like that as advice for people. And I've often seen at like paddling symposiums, they tend to be over 3 or 4 days, and getting people to manage their energy on the first day or two so they can still keep going for 3 or 4 days is often the biggest battle, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true, actually. Yeah. When you're teaching it and doing it all the time, you forget how tiring it is for most people that don't do it all the time, especially learning new stuff, pushing themselves, probably socializing a bit too much.
That's it. Yeah. It takes 3 nights to get used to a new bed. Well, that's 3 nights at a symposium. Get you like a bad sleep. And then, as you said, too much partying. Although I think I'm getting too old for too much partying these days, if I'm to be honest with you. I've burnt that bridge. I've got a few things left I want us to chat around, but I want to talk about the elephant in the room. You've mentioned it a few times, which is COVID. What's been the real impact of COVID on the outdoor industry from your perspective in Canada?
Well, my partner runs a kayaking company. He does a lot of guide training and Paddle Canada courses, which is the equivalent of like the BC courses, and also advanced expeditions and custom trips. And he was 80% down last year. So a lot of the guide training courses, or some of the guide training courses, still happened. We weren't allowed to do anything from March till June. And a lot of the guide training happened in that period. So that's 3.5 months or 2.5 months where he had zero income and he would normally be doing a fair bit of training. And then after that, he was able to do some training, but instead of 10 students and 2 instructors, it was 1 instructor and 5 students to maintain the guidelines and the distances. And many courses were cancelled. All the advanced trips were cancelled. So it had a massive negative impact. There were a few more local people wanting to go kayaking. So we were able to run some more kind of entry-level courses. And also JF sells a few kayaks, and he had a bumper year selling kayaks. And so did everyone, all the outdoor retailers like kayaking, cycling, whatever, had record years. And then other people locally that take tourists out. Some people were able to do some things through the summer, but again, in a much reduced capacity. So it had quite a big impact. So you just have to sort of suck it up, hope it gets better, and to some extent, I suppose, diversify. So I've been giving a few presentations by Zoom, and Jeff's doing an online classroom, so people can learn online. So just trying to, innovate and do things a little bit differently. Yeah.
I have for the coaching and guiding part of the outdoor industry, I have a concern about where we end up to at some point in time. You were just saying that this summer's trips may well be cancelled if COVID carries on as it is. And the UK is certainly looking like that. And in these conversations that I'm having, or these chats, I'm finding a lot of people who are getting very close to the edge of, maybe I can't be a coach or a guide anymore. Maybe I've got to go and do something that's got a more COVID-proof income generation source or something. And let's talk about the other elephant in the room. You've been doing the stock market, thinking about other incomes. Let's just chuck this into it. Come on, let's step into it. How's the stock market for a paddler?
You know what? It's good. I mean, yeah, I was telling you before this that this year, I sold my house in the UK. I had some money. And so I slowly started investing and educating myself about it. And I spent a lot of time doing research. But still, initially, I lost a lot of money by when we had the crash and things started to recover. I kind of bet on things not recovering, and that was wrong. So, but I've since learned a lot more, and I've earned more money in the stock market than I would have done if I had guided last year now. So it's kind of crazy, and it feels a bit weird in a way, because it's not kind of honest work. You know, you're not grafting, you're not producing anything yourself. You're just putting money here and hoping that it grows in other companies that are doing things. But it's a weird thing. And I know, like, it's been in the news quite a bit with all the Reddit traders and pushing up stocks like GameStop. Is that what it's called?
GameStop.
Whatever it was called.
Something like that, yeah.
Whatever, yeah, that thing. That and a lot of people are looking to get rich super quick. And that can be dangerous, because you see something going up, and you buy it at the top, and then it goes down, 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 down. So I'm not doing that. I probably did a little bit of that early on and lost money. So now I just look for good stocks with good prospects, and I try and buy them on dips. And it's been working for me. Yeah. So that's what I spend some of my time doing now, as well as just trying to enjoy the beautiful environment that I live in and getting outdoors and doing stuff. And I miss friends and family. I can still socialize with some friends here outside. But, you know, we haven't had people in our house for a long time, and I haven't seen my family in the UK for over a year. My sister's just had a third baby. So, yeah, it's kind of sad not to be able to come over to the UK and see people, go paddling with my paddling friends. But I think I'm relatively lucky compared to a lot of people. You know, I do have this amazing playground on my doorstep that I'm still able to get out in regularly. And I have friends locally that I can do that outside with. And I've been able to find another source of income by learning about the stock market. And yeah, it's been quite an education the last year.
It's crazy. Sure. So somebody once suggested to me before I set my first outdoor business up, they said, why don't you just find a way of working for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening every day and just keep paddling for you? I was like, you're crazy. What a stupid idea. And yeah, pretty much now I work 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening and just keep paddling for me. And I don't do much coaching or guiding anymore. And it's very interesting to have that thing that transitioned from being a hobby into a job, to have it back as a hobby. I almost feel like I was 16 or 17 years old again, where I was just like, I'm going to go and do this because it seems like a good idea. And there's no other agenda attached to it. Like, you don't have to be somewhere to work somewhere or do something. You can just cherry pick. And it's quite refreshing.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, for me, most of my life, I have done my own trips and filmed them to make a living. For the last few years, I've been doing more teaching and guiding. I've always done a little bit. And I realized this year that I did too much the previous years, and I got a bit burnt out. And last year, the year before last, I did a 14-day guided trip, 5 days off, and then a 19-day guided trip. Amazing trips, amazing people. But I also organize all the food for 12 people for 19 days and 12 people for 14 days. And so you get back from a trip, you rinse the kit, you get rid of stuff, you get the food for the next trip, you drive it. And it was a day's drive to get to the next trip. So it was too much. By the end of that, I could feel myself getting a bit irritated. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not on the best form now. I need to be happy, jolly, helpful, merry the whole time. And I just thought, that was too much. So in future, I definitely don't want to do that much.
So you mentioned about the advanced trips. Tell me a little bit more about those. If people want to come to the island and come and go on an advanced guided trip or learn some stuff with you guys, what can they expect?
Well, the guided trips, one is a 19-day trip, and we get the ferry from Port Hardy up to Bella Bella on the central coast. I think it's about 340 kilometers we paddle over 19 days. I might have got that wrong. It might be 240. It's a fairly ambitious distance. It was a beautiful stretch of coastline in the Great Bear Rainforest. And we tried to go on the outside. So there's a bunch of islands. So if the weather's bad, you can go on the inside. But we've done it twice. And we've managed to get out to Calvert Island and Goose Island, some of these beautiful islands on the coast. And it's not really instruction along the way. We want people that are pretty competent, but we'll give little bits of instruction if people want it. And we'll share the weather forecasting and the decision making and everything like that with people. But it's really just they want to come and see a beautiful area. They want to have really nice meals prepared for them. And they just want an extra safety net, or they want some company, or whatever it is, whatever reason they want. And there's not many other chances that you can go guided into these sort of areas and do such a long distance and a sort of significant journey with a guided company. Most companies would go to the Great Bear Rainforest for a week, maybe 10 days, and do a fraction of the distance. And then one of the other trips we do is around the Brooks Peninsula, which is like one of the more challenging sections of Vancouver Island. And, I love that area. I think it's absolutely stunning. And so why not take people around it? It's a place that a lot of people want to do, but are too afraid to do by themselves. So, we do a journey, which is, I don't remember how long, over, I think that one, 14 days. But, we had to build in quite a few contingencies, assuming we might have to have, days off due to the weather. But they're beautiful parts of the world that you can just, it's a rare opportunity for good paddlers who want that extra safety net to be able to go on a sort of a real journey in a beautiful place.
Yeah.
In challenging conditions, potentially.
Yeah. It's the safety net, and it's somebody else organizing the logistics for you, and like a guaranteed group to go with, because there's things that I'd like to go and do, but finding people who've got the same desire with the same time available, and the same money available, so on and so forth, it can be a real headache. Yeah. So I think there's not many places in the world where you can go and decent paddlers can go and have decent experiences and have somebody else pick up a lot of the headaches for them.
Exactly. Yeah. And so the Brooks Peninsula trip, we arrange a shuttle. So, no one has to worry about that. It works really well. We just done that one once, and that one we're due to do this year. And I'm not sure, we may be able to do that one, because I'm not sure. We'll see. We're just too many unknowns at the moment.
Crazy. So as we come closer towards the end of our time together, I've got two thoughts. One is, where next for sea paddling?
It's a tricky question, because I know if you talk to manufacturers, people aren't really buying expedition kayaks anymore. It's short and day trips and park and play, maybe. It's a bit out of fashion. But I think there will always be people going on expeditions, maybe just fewer people. I don't really know. There's a lot of kayaking, but often on a pelican kayak, just paddling around on a lake, or, just with the paddle upside down, but having fun. And maybe some of those will translate into a more serious kayaking and progress onto a better kayak. And I don't really know, to be honest. I know this year with COVID, a lot more people wanted to start kayaking. Kayak sales went through the roof, and there are a lot of people wanting to do introductory courses. So I don't know how many people will keep that up going forward, or whether as soon as they can get on the plane again, they'll go to wherever they go, Mexico on a surfing holiday instead, or I don't know, an all-inclusive resort, whatever they did before.
Yeah.
And I don't really know. I mean, for me, it's interesting, but I just sort of look at myself and my group of friends, and I will always kayak. I love it. There's so many different aspects to it. There's the day trip, the surf paddle, the going to a tidal race, and then the journeying aspect. And I love that you can put so much stuff in a sea kayak and just go off for a day or a week and just be totally self-sufficient, and you can just get away from everything. So I love that aspect of sea kayaking, and I can't imagine it not being in my life. But there's so many other things people do these days, and a lot of people want instant gratification, and sea kayaking doesn't really fall into that category. So who knows? But I think there'll always be people that love it and will continue to do it.
Yeah, it's a funny one. Part of me wonders whether the reduction of people getting longer, more expedition type sea kayaks and getting more of your sort of plastic rock hopping-y type boats, whether that trend is actually driven by the manufacturers, because sea kayaking presents a real business problem for manufacturers, because you buy an expedition sea kayak, and my last one I think I had, you said you've still got one kicking around from 20 years ago pretty much, and I certainly 5 to 10 years out of a kayak, you're not exactly a regular purchaser, and so I wonder whether the trend of have a short one, have a plastic rock hoppy one, have a longer expedition one, and then choose. Most people only have 2 days a week to play with, don't they? They only have a Saturday or a Sunday. I guess boats that are just for day trips make almost more sense in some respects.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For the majority of people, yeah. And really, there's not that many kayakers that go on trips for a week or more, and they probably already have an expedition kayak, or there's enough second-hand ones around. They don't need a new one. Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about it being driven by the manufacturers, but that's possible. And there's a lot more, risk in buying a specific expedition kayak for a lot of money and having it stuck in the store. Whereas you buy a plastic rock hopping boat, it costs a lot less. Probably the margins are less, but you're more likely to shift it. I'm
just thinking that the manufacturers have to make some money, so they've got to go and sell X amount of boats per year, and there's only so many paddlers out there, or new paddlers out there. And we have to be thankful, because without them we wouldn't have boats to paddle. But equally, it's an interesting thing. So that's the future of sea kayaking. Beyond what you've already mentioned, what's the future of paddling for you look like? Have you got more trips lined up? Have you got when COVID goes away, I'm going to idea?
Well, as I mentioned, this year might end up being a good opportunity for a longer trip. And while I'm now working more as a guide in the summer here, it's harder for me to do a longer trip. So I haven't done a long trip for a while. I mean, my partner and I, we did a month in the Canadian Arctic a few years ago, which was cool. And a couple of years ago, we did a month in the central coast area of BC. But this year, I think we might get the chance to go away for between 1 and 3 months, depending on what's cancelled work-wise. And then next year probably will be busy work-wise, so no opportunity for a longer trip. I'd also like to go away in the winter and do a longer trip. But then I usually go back to the UK and see family, and we usually work in Antarctica for 6 weeks. And next year, all being good, we're going to be actually doing a month-long trip in Antarctica, followed by a 2-week trip in the Chilean fjords, which is a yacht-supported trip where we take just 5 clients on the yacht. JF and I guide, and we have 2 yacht skippers. And so it's a pretty cool trip. But next year, we'll be away for almost 2 months in Antarctica and South America and in the UK. So there's no real time to go and do a winter trip either. So I need to just kind of push work aside a little bit and make sure that I'm still making time to do some trips for myself. Other than that, I'm doing a lot of shorter trips locally this year, and quite a bit of surf kayaking. And I've been doing hiking and skiing. So just trying to, and on my bike a bit too. So, but I would like to do another longer trip. And I quite fancy Iceland or Newfoundland or Vancouver Island. I think this year I hope to be able to do one of those, depending on COVID and whatever. Yeah. At the moment, it's Vancouver Island is probably the only one I'll actually be able to do. And I've already been around the island, but it'd be nice to do it again and do it slower. And yeah, I like the idea of leaving from my front door.
I've been up and around the Scottish coast a huge amount in a sea kayak, and while some of the places that you launch and land remain the same, a different day with different weather conditions, different tidal conditions, it can feel and look completely different, almost like you've never been there before. So
for sure.
I reckon Vancouver Island will be similar to that for you. You'll be like, oh, I didn't see that the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking the other thing we could do is go around the other way, although that's less helpful with the conditions. Like normally people go clockwise. No, that's counterclockwise. But I was thinking clockwise. Why not just to do it differently? Yeah.
That's right.
The good weather winds usually from the northwest.
People normally go up north up the inside, don't they? And then come south on the outside.
Yeah. Because the good weather winds are from the northwest. Although the swell's usually from the southwest. So, if you went the other way, you'd have the swell behind you. And if you waited for the bad weather days, then you'd have the wind behind you. No. But in the summer, the wind is pretty regularly northwest.
Okay.
So it really does help to go that way most of the time.
Yeah, well, it would help for me because I get very grumpy paddling into the wind for extended periods of time.
Yeah, me too. I really like a downwind run.
Yeah, I remember the last time I was in Scotland paddling towards Sandwood Bay, which is right up on Cape Wrath. And I think we had the tide behind us and the swell and the wind behind us. Like, I think we did 28 kilometers in 2 hours or something ridiculous. And
wow.
Just surfing swells. And I don't know if you probably felt this, but when your boat, everything vibrates. It's like
yes.
Almost like the tire on your car wheel needs rebalancing, that level. and literally my whole boat vibrated for 2 hours straight.
That's awesome. Oh. I love that sort of paddling.
It's very.
That's another reason I like going on.
Go on.
Sorry. Another reason I like going on trips, because when you have a day like that, you don't have to worry about getting back to your car. You just enjoy it and paddle as far as you can.
Yeah, you don't have to turn around and slog back into it for any period of time.
Exactly. You can just enjoy it and just go as far as you can.
It's very interesting though, and on days like that, I had the afternoon of my life on that section heading towards Sandwood Bay on the west coast of Scotland there, with that the swell and the wind and the tide and the vibrating boat. The other two guys my friends, they hated it. They had the worst afternoon of their life. I got off in Sandwood Bay with a big smile on my face and that was the best thing ever. And they were seriously grumpy. And it must be a really acquired taste, or maybe some people don't spend enough time learning how to go and ride the swells like that. But
it can be intimidating if they weren't comfortable with it. I could understand they were probably scared they were going to get capsized at every moment. And a lot of people don't like that at all. Especially, they obviously weren't beginners, but beginners hate the following sea because it picks their boat up and throws it around in unpredictable ways. Whereas once you get to learn how to know how to harness that, oh my God.
It's the best thing ever. It really,
exactly.
Really the closest sensation I could give anybody was whitewater kayaking on the Zambezi. That's the same level of sensation. And I think that bit of whitewater kayaking coming into sea kayaking was really beneficial in those sorts of environments, because you're you can kind of guess what's going to happen in a split second time from what you've picked up in the whitewater. Anyhow.
You obviously have good reactions and good boat control. But I think probably that is one of my absolute favorite things about paddling trips is a good downwind run. I love it.
It is incredible. It is incredible. Justine, I just want to say thank you so much as we come to an end with our time together today. you were somebody who brought sea kayaking genuinely to the masses, where they could actually watch it on their TV, on their laptop, wherever it is that they choose to, and get inspired to watch paddlers doing things in places where most paddlers wouldn't be brave enough or lucky enough to go to. And it would be fair to say that This Is the Sea and your other DVDs probably inspired a generation to go paddling. And I don't think you recognize that, but I think the rest of us do. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Well, thank you for saying that. That's very kind. Yeah, it's nice to think that some people have been inspired by them. Sometimes I forget that, actually, living here or isolated, really. And then sometimes I meet someone who says something nice like that. And it's really nice. And I'm suddenly like, oh, yeah, I made all those films and a lot of people like them. That's cool. It's weird. It's nice to hear, because sometimes I kind of forget.
Oh, don't forget.
When I did it, and people liked it.
Go make more. I think all of us don't realize what trigger points we go and find for other people. Just that little flick of a switch for them to go, oh, I want to do that. And I think that what you've done is given people a lot of those flicks of the switch, as like, oh, I could go there or whatever. So thank you very much. Is there anything from you to finish this off with? Anywhere you'd like people to go to, social media, anything like that?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you very much for having me on. It's been really fun to chat with you. Like you said, it's been a while. We could say a significant birthday for many not teenagers anymore. So no, it's been really fun. I kind of forgot what you were like. It was so long ago, if you know what I mean. We didn't really know each other very well, but I really enjoyed chatting with you. And yeah, if people are interested, they can go to my website, which is cackletv.com. And yeah, I'll find my social media links on there. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and still sell DVDs and downloads.
Awesome. And folks, if you want to go hang out with Justine, jump on her website, send her an email and say, hey, I want to go paddling in Canada, and I bet she'll find a way to make it possible for you. Justine, thank you for your time, effort, and energy, everything you bring the world. I look forward to the next conversation.
Yeah, you too. Thanks very much.